We're going to try to be a little bit more positive on our podcast this time. I got a comment from someone I know after our podcast the other day, said that it was like staring into the abyss for 50 minutes. After we kind of gave our thoughts on what happened from the Arkansas-Auburn game. I guess the positive is that Arkansas is probably going to win this weekend. They get FIU in Fayetteville. Or
you
31
still said
point.
Probably, though.
Well, I don't think you can say anything's a given, right?
Exactly.
But they're a 31-point favorite to beat FIU this weekend. And I guess, if you're part of the sicko committee, if they lose, you're probably going to get what you want, which is a new coach next year. You got to win this game for certain. You lose it, and it's a Citadel, Western Kentucky type moment for the Razorbacks. But they're going to play FIU. It's a game that just does not move the needle, does it? It's I can't get up for this game. And it's not like there's any other games in the SEC to really get up for this weekend. This is the week that everybody's playing their cupcake to get ready for their rivalry game Thanksgiving weekend. Scottie and I, we put together these keys every week for our game day tab that runs in our Saturday newspaper. And it was really hard to come up with something for this game because, honestly, the number one key for Arkansas FIU is show up. Show up and play like you know how, and that ought to be enough to beat a team like this.
I think personally the toughest thing about Saturday's game is that it starts at 6:30.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to wait around all day for it. There's going to be some really good games on, and all those games are going to be over, and then you're kind of looking at the nightcap or the late games, and one of them's Arkansas FIU. My wife was actually asking earlier this week, kind of, what do you think about the game on Saturday? And I'm like, well, I saw point spreads earlier this week, and Arkansas is favored by 31, and that kind of tells you all you need to know about the team Arkansas is playing. And you put those two things together, it's like on paper, it's just not pretty. And I don't think what we're going to see on the field is going to be very pretty either. Could be the prettiest game that Arkansas plays this year, probably. But still, there are guys for FIU that could give Arkansas some issues on either side of the ball. I wrote about those in the keys. Who knows if it'll materialize, but they've got a receiver that's really good. They've got a linebacker with almost 15 TFLs. It's a team that's coming off of an awful loss to Middle Tennessee last week,
40-6.
So it is not a good team, and it's a team that Arkansas should handle easily. But nothing has been easy to this point.
The last time that I said Arkansas is playing the worst team in the nation, I'm still convinced Kent State is not good at all. I think they have one win right now. Then Arkansas absolutely flopped. I think you got to use the word probably. You can't take anything for granted with this Arkansas team right now. I know we said we're going to be nicer on this podcast, but all I know is this year, the moment you think that you have maybe something figured out about this team, you might need to just reassess because it seems like it changes. This FIU team, not very good. Not very good within Conference USA either. I was looking at most offensive and defensive categories, and it's kind of weird. They, in a weird way, kind of mirror Arkansas. Offense, the Arkansas's defense is better relative to the SEC than FIU's defense is relative to Conference USA, but a lot of things really mirror each other, except FIU is doing it against, these Conference USA teams. So, definitely a sicko game this week. If you watch the whole game, then kudos to you, because that's probably going to be doing, I think I'll probably take my eyes off of it for a couple plays here and there.
If you look at CFB stats, you go to FIU's team page, they have not played in front of a crowd larger than 20,405. Arkansas will get that, I think, surely.
I don't have any doubt there's going to be, I made a kind of tongue-in-cheek comment the other day that I don't think there'll be 23,000 people there. I think there'll certainly be more than that, but, it's 40,000. Max, wouldn't you think?
This is the game that you'd love to have in War Memorial.
Yeah, this would be a great game to have in Little Rock for sure.
I haven't talked to many people who I know. I'm a recent grad at the university, so I still have quite a few friends who are in the area, and I haven't talked to many of my friends that usually go to games who are going to this week. I know that's just a subset of a general population that goes to these games. But it seems like this is one that a lot of people are kind of steering clear of.
I think we mentioned this the other day. I know you got classes on Monday and Tuesday at the U of A, but we all know that most people check out for Thanksgiving on Friday,
Oh, 100%.
if not before.
I think we were all probably those students at one
I actually
point.
had a test on a Tuesday one time before.
Kept
Hey,
you around.
little fun aside, I got accused for cheating, and like through my anger, I think I told this woman who was administering the math test, I said, "Don't you think if I was cheating, I would have made better than a 51?" So that's my memory before Thanksgiving. Let's talk a little bit about FIU and those players that Scottie mentioned. Ethan, I think you've watched more of them than anybody else sitting here at the table.
He's sicko
Yeah.
committee chairman over here.
Unfortunately, yes, I have. They do. Scottie mentioned their stud receiver, Chris Mitchell. He's really good. He's number 1 in Conference USA in receiving yards. He's got 845 on the year on 50 catches. He's easily their top target. Like, I think that the number 2 and 3 receivers combined, their receptions are fewer than his. So he's a guy who you just got to probably try and take out of the equation as much as you can. And then the linebacker that Scottie mentioned, Donovan Manuel, he's 13th in the nation in total tackles. He's almost averaging double-figure tackles per game, 9.9. And he's kind of just a one-man wrecking crew for them. He's also 3rd in the nation in forced fumbles. He's averaging like a half forced fumble a game, almost that. So he's a guy who's been really good for them. They got some good pieces on the team, but collectively they're struggling. This is kind of one of those stats that jumps out to you. I was looking at FIU in games they have lost this year. They're getting outscored in the fourth quarter 52-0. They have not scored a point in the fourth quarter in a game they've lost. If you throw their wins in there as well, they're getting outscored 72-11. So even in those games that they are winning, it's like the fourth quarter has been really bad to them. I mean, if you're Arkansas, I think you really don't want this to have to come to the fourth quarter, but I'm not putting anything past it. All I know is Florida International has not been good closing games. They aren't very good on defense either. They've surrendered 29.7 points per game. If you're giving up around 30 points a game just on average for the year, that tells a lot. I think this is a game, maybe Arkansas's offense, I've said this so many times, this is maybe a game Arkansas's offense can have some success against a team that's struggling to defend. And then kind of one last note on FIU. It just seems like it's a theme for Arkansas this year. They keep on playing good teams with good kickers. Their kicker, Chase Gabriel, he hasn't kicked many field goals this year, but he's 9 of 11, and he has a make from 50 yards. So, I mean, I feel like every week I'm talking about Arkansas is playing a good kicker, but they've gone through a stretch of a lot of good kickers they've gone up against.
Arkansas's got a pretty good kicker, too. We talked about that the other day.
Yeah.
This is a little segue. Special teams, I feel like, is always something to watch in these games. Not necessarily from the kicking standpoint, but I've always felt like one of the reasons that, so like teams like Alabama, Georgia, they do so well on special teams, they've got athletes stockpiled on special teams. I mean, the guys that are going to be starring for them next year or in 2 years, as long as they can keep them out of the transfer portal, they're playing for them on special teams right now. And you look at Arkansas, even Western Carolina, they had a couple of big kickoff returns with Satania. BYU, Satania's got the big 88-yard punt return for a touchdown. I don't know, I just feel like special teams is something to watch in this game because of maybe the discrepancy in the athletes.
Yeah, we mentioned it before that first game of the year. I just think that whenever you're a team like FIU that's trying to come in and get an upset because you're playing an SEC team, a big play on special teams can take so much wind out of your sails because you already know it's an uphill battle that it's almost like you have to be on your A game and hope that Arkansas is not at all on theirs. So if Arkansas can manufacture, I'm not even saying manufacture like a touchdown on special teams, but like just even set yourself up in good territory because this Arkansas offense, they haven't been super opportunistic like with getting good field position and scoring, but maybe this is a game that if Satania can get them in, maybe around midfield, the offense has a shorter field to work with. You have a good kicker. It's just like it's super defeating, I think, if you're an FIU and you don't have a great defense and they're already pinned up, they're behind the wall. Just having to try and make up for a really bad play on special teams.
We talked in our keys this week about sense of urgency, Scottie. That's something that Sam Pittman mentioned earlier in the week, that there have been a lot of games where it just seems like they don't have a lot of sense of urgency when the game begins.
Man, you're not lying. And I mean, it was last week too. They get down to Auburn in a flash, and it just seems like that offense was still moving in slow motion. You know what I mean? It's like 3rd and long, and you're trying to set up a screen pass, and just like it seemed like nothing went right. You've got to be sharp, and I think Arkansas's athleticism advantage in this game is going to, probably make it look like there's more urgency just because they're they're faster than FIU, more physical and all those things at nearly every position. I found, I went through. I said Arkansas's got to carry their urgency through the end of the week because they're in no position not to.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam said last week, and I kind of wrote this sense of urgency note because Sam said last week that Arkansas had a really good week of practice. And I think when Hunter Yurachek and Bob Holt were talking after our sports club last week, Bob got from Hunter, he was like, "Yeah, I think I think they're prepared, they're ready. Will it translate to the field? We don't know." Sam seemed like he was confident during the week, and then it just didn't translate to the field. It needs to translate this week. And then I kind of went through and was like, here's what that urgency could look like in all 3 phases. And on offense, Arkansas at home has just been bad. And I went back, and Arkansas is averaging 313.2 yards per game at home this season. That's the lowest figure in home games since 2001. So this offense is not. This is like the 2nd worst home offense this century.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think they're going to go put up some points. I mean, if you're giving up a ton of points. Like you gave up 40 to Middle Tennessee, 41 to Jacksonville State, 27 to Sam Houston. Like Arkansas is going to put up points on these dudes. And the more I think about it, I think Arkansas is probably going to cover that spread. It's because the talent discrepancy and the depth is so great. But you want to see, like, can Arkansas's defense or can Arkansas's offense put a complete game together? Saw it against Florida where they finally went for 200 and 200 on the ground and through the air. They've got to do that, but I think it's got to start from the get-go, and they can't just kind of fool around with them.
My biggest question for this is, what's the motivation? What's the motivation for the players? Because there's no postseason. And so, I mean, you know how this goes. There's probably some of these players who are getting spoken to by teams or third parties about, hey, come play for us. Portal opens December, whatever. There's probably some players who are looking at their draft potential, who are thinking about, hey, let's go ahead and get draft workouts set up. So where's the mind and where's the motivation going into this? Because you're not playing for the postseason. You're playing for pride. You're playing for maybe a coaching staff that's not got real good job stability right now. I don't know where the motivation is, and that's what makes me a little bit leery of the 31-point spread.
Understandable.
Is that and the fact they haven't beaten a team by 31 this year.
Yeah.
They beat Western Carolina, but at the FBS level, Ethan and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. Kent State is number 133 in the S&P rankings on ESPN.com out of 133 teams in the FBS. FIU's 129th.
Yeah.
And Arkansas, when there was a whole lot more to play for, and they're feeling a lot better about themselves, and they probably had a few more pieces in terms of injury, they only beat Kent State by 22 on the same field. So it makes me wonder about that point spread a little bit.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I wouldn't touch that line with somebody else's money. But I think football players like to go play football. And so I think that's kind of what they're going for. Defensively, I think all the guys love Travis Williams. I think all the guys on defense love their coaching staff, the staff that has kind of resurrected the defense from whatever the heck it was last year or, in previous seasons.
But will Sam Pittman say they finished last year?
They finished last year, and especially in pass defense. But I think sometimes we can just undersell that guys just like to go. They just like to go play ball, and I think you see that. This might be a bad example, but you see like some of these SWAC schools on the basketball side. Pretty good chance that they're not going to be very good, but they still get a chance to go hoop, and they still get a chance to go play. And somebody could look at somebody has a big day on Saturday. Granted, it'll be against FIU. They have a big day. They could get somebody's attention, potentially down the line. And I think it's an opportunity for individuals to shine. And if individuals shine, enough of them, you'll get your fourth win of the year.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking. I mean, it's a day that, especially on the defensive side, I mean, the offense should, right now, it's like the motivation should be pride probably after how poorly they played the last time they were out there. But the defense, there's just so many players who could have a feast day out there. I mean, FIU, they have been sacked a combined 42 times, which is most in Conference USA and fourth most in the nation. So I'm looking at like your Landon Jackson, and Trajan Jeffcoat.
That was one of my keys was Arkansas's pass rush because FIU's only one of 5 D1 teams that's given up more sacks than Arkansas this year.
Their offensive line is not. I mean, we've talked a lot about Arkansas's offensive line struggles this year. FIU is doing equally as bad, if not worse, and they're doing it against Conference USA teams. And this is kind of a crazy stat to me. Their quarterback, Jenkins, he has, if you look on their team, their rushing totals, he's third on the team with 49 rushing yards. But if you just took his gains, he has 287 yards like running, but you have to negate 238 yards from that.
Yikes.
Or I might have my math wrong there, but
200
but
plus
the point
yards.
being, there's
there's a lot of yards there.
Adjusted.
Yeah, it makes it look like he has no ability to run the ball, but he actually kind of does. It's just he gets sacked so much that his sack yardage and his run yardage is about equal right now. I think that players like Landon Jackson and Jeffcoat and some of those others, like that could be a big motivator. Just that I know it's FIU you're playing, but I mean to just have a big game. Landon Jackson's on some draft boards for sure right now.
He's got a potential to be all SEC.
Yeah, so
I don't know if he can beat out some of these other defensive ends, but I think that potential is there. I think when you get 3.5 sacks in Tuscaloosa, that's going to get on some people's radar, and I mean you can kind of pad your stats a little bit in a game like this. So,
and I think a guy like Dwight McLeathern, you hear that they have a great receiver coming in there. I think a player like him takes that as a challenge of like, I want to shut this dude down. I think on the defensive side, you don't have to be as worried as maybe on the offensive of like motivation. But
I'm still a little bit leery, especially after what we saw with Peyton Thorne last week. Like if you've got a quarterback that can be pretty deceptive in the RPO game, like you can give Arkansas some trouble, and Arkansas has not been tackling well since the bye week. So that I'm not going to say it's a huge concern of mine because I think Arkansas is superior in essentially every aspect of this game. But there are some things that if you don't do well, I mean, it could be a competitive game for at least a little while.
You still got to show up. I mean, that's the number one thing. You got to show up, and we talked about this the other day. You got to find your own energy when there's not going to be a lot of people in the stadium, and those factors I think make it just enough that you tune in just to see, hey, what happens. The Whole Hog Football Podcast is sponsored by Kendall King Design, Display, Signage, KendallKing.com. That's KendallKing.com.
The Kendall King Group family of companies plays to win, just like our hogs. We know how demanding retail marketing is today. From digital omnichannel creative services, through in-store signing and displays, and finally to social influence, we've got you covered. Our KKG Inc. family of companies, Kendall King, Shopcart Creative, and Soapbox Influence are winning with multiple retailers and brands. We play to win and will be a winning partner for all your retail marketing service needs. Go Hogs!
Well, if you're a fan of SEC football, this is not a good week for you. It's the worst week of the year when it comes to games in terms of SEC versus SEC. They're bad games. You got one good game this week. You got Georgia at Tennessee. We'll talk about it here in just a minute. That's going to be kind of the marquee game of the week. But, I mean, just look at some of these matchups. You got Chattanooga at Alabama. Louisiana Monroe is at Ole Miss. We know that Arkansas is playing FIU on Saturday night. Georgia State goes to LSU on Saturday night. New Mexico State is at Auburn. Abilene Christian is at Texas A&M. And I'll say this, I think this may be the one SEC versus non-conference team where I'd put them a little bit on upset. Southern Miss goes to Mississippi State. Mississippi State just fired their head coach. We know how bad they've looked all season, really. Southern Miss, they've only got 3 wins, but they've got some interesting results on their schedule. They played James Madison tough. James Madison, obviously, kind of a little bit of a Cinderella type team this year. And Southern Miss has won 2 in a row. They got some confidence. Mississippi State, they just fired their coach. That may be a little bit of an upset special this week. But I think if you were the SEC commissioner and you want to score quick, easy points with your fan bases, you go in and say, hey, look, teams, we're going to quit scheduling these horrible games the final week before Thanksgiving when the ratings should be, the matchup should be at an all-time high this time of year. I mean, this is when you ought to be having big-time matchups. And what's happened, this really started with Urban Meyer at Florida. I think somewhere around 2008, 2009. He started scheduling a cupcake the week before they played Florida State because he wanted his team to be rested. He wanted them to be fresh for that Florida State game. And then everybody else noticed what they were doing. I think, Florida had good success against the Seminoles during Meyer's years. And so then all of a sudden Alabama says, well, I want to have a week before I play Auburn. And Auburn, I want to have a week before I play the Iron Bowl. And now everybody's doing it. And for the longest time, Arkansas wasn't doing it. And now they are. You got them playing FIU this year. They're going to play Louisiana Tech on this week next year, the week before Thanksgiving. I just hate this. And I would think that the commissioner, in coordination with the television partners, would say, guys, we got to stop doing this. You want to play these crappy teams, play them early in the year. We need to have games that have some meat on them this time of the year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's almost a better time to just watch college basketball on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there may be a better group of college basketball games.
For sure. I mean, the only game that is even halfway interesting is obviously Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Missouri. I don't know, maybe you tune into that just to see if Billy Napier can try to find a way to, get some goodwill with Florida's fans. Yeah. And then that Kentucky South Carolina game to end at 6:30 that night is just gross. But I will say maybe the highlight out of the weekend outside of Georgia, Tennessee is going to be LSU's. They're bringing their purple jerseys out for this weekend.
Are they really?
So
I always thought that they'd save their purple jerseys whenever they played in-state teams, but maybe they don't play an in-state team this year?
No, they're playing. Yeah, it's just Georgia State on Saturday night. But those LSU purple tops, probably my favorite in all of college football. And I come from a high school where our colors were purple, white, and gold, so I'm a little partial. But that's a pretty sweet
Same
look.
here. I was also purple, white, and gold school.
We know.
We understand. There's something special about a purple top.
And then you put Jaden Daniels in a sweet purple top. I mean, his numbers go up by 100 yards on the ground and throwing the ball.
The SEC loses out this week. By the way, my high school is orange and black, but I call Fayetteville's games, so they're purple and white. So I guess I can kind of have a little bit of a tie to purple. The SEC just loses out. You look at the best games of the week; they're elsewhere. You got Big 12, K-State and Kansas are both in the top 25. I think probably the big game of the weekend is Washington and Oregon State. I'm just scrolling through here looking at other ones.
That's going to be a phenomenal game.
Yeah,
it's going to be a really good game. I mean, Washington's
Utah
undefeated.
and Arizona, another one in the Pac-12.
Washington's undefeated, going on the road. Michael Penix has a Heisman case. I mean, if you go in there and you ball, I mean, you could put yourself probably, I don't know if you're on equal footing with what Jaden Daniels is doing, but that's going to be a hell of a win if he can get one and he plays well.
You know what the best drama of the weekend is going to be is if you can get cameras in the courtroom for Jim Harbaugh's suspension hearing.
No doubt. Throw that thing on Court TV. Is that still Court TV still a thing?
I think it is.
Why not do that? That's ratings bonanza.
That's the big drama this week. All right, Blake, hit the music. We'll go through the SEC now, the games of interest this weekend. We mentioned a lot of them. We're not going to pick most of them, but we will talk about the all-SEC games plus Arkansas's game here in just a minute. We'll start with the 6:30 game. It's an ESPN game Saturday night. Florida goes to Missouri. Missouri is ranked number 9 this week in the college football playoff poll, and we've been talking all year. They look like they're on track for 10 wins And they get the Gators and they get the Razorbacks in the year.
That's a really good Missouri team. I know we talk about it. It feels like more and more every week because they keep impressing. It seems like more and more every week. I mean, I don't think that game's going to be close. Like if Arkansas's offense put up numbers against Florida's defense, Missouri's offense is going to do that same thing. I don't think that one's going to be even close.
Yeah, I think Florida gets torched by them, to be honest, just the way that Florida's trending right now. And that three-headed monster at Missouri of Brady Cook, Luther Burden, and Cody Schrader, their running back, leads the SEC in rushing yardage right now. I mean, they have a really good offense. Their defense is probably pretty underrated too. I'm right there with you. I think this is actually a pretty good Missouri team. You know, early in the year we were kind of holding our breath with that start and the schedule they had, but what they did last week to Tennessee has me completely sold on them now. And even just what they did to go in and have a really good showing against Georgia, even though they got beat. I think that Missouri team is pretty solid.
They're only favored by 11.5. That seems really low to me.
They're good at home. They're really good at home. You saw what they did to Tennessee last week. Schrader is a really cool story, by the way. He's one of the 3 finalists for the Burlsworth Trophy this year. If you haven't looked in his story, go look it up. I mean, D2 running back who was at Truman State, right outside of St. Louis, goes to Missouri, and now within 2 years, he's the best running back in the SEC. Last week, I think he was the 10th player in FBS history who had 200 rushing yards and 100 receiving yards in the same game.
Yeah,
really, really crazy.
And he's also defined like he's 5'9" too. It's just like a really good story of a guy who.
That's probably why he was in D2 in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously really talented though.
Just 2 teams going in different directions. And boy, if you're Florida, they were 5-2, and now you have to get to a bowl game by beating one of the 2 top 10 teams in the country, Missouri or Florida State. Tough deal for them. I think Missouri wins that game. I think momentum is such a big deal in football, and I think Missouri's got it, and Florida does not. Same time, Saturday night, 6:30 kickoff. Kentucky goes to South Carolina. This one will be on the SEC Network. Scottie?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I haven't looked into that game at all. Kentucky's actually a road favorite. How about that? Like, with all of I feel like South Carolina had so much momentum coming into this season. I mean, I never would think just a ton about South Carolina football, but if you would have told me that South Carolina was going to be a home underdog to a team like Kentucky in November, the way that South Carolina came into the season, I would say that there's no way. I'll go with South Carolina. I can't really tell you why, but I'm not a believer really in Kentucky either. So I'll go with whoever's at home. So South Carolina's my pick, I guess.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, number one, like we said, this is just a gross game, but I like South Carolina's offense more than Kentucky's. I think that they'll win this game and then go into that Clemson game trying to get bowl eligible.
Kentucky's defense is not good this year. That's really been their bugaboo, and that's, under Stoops, obviously he's got the defensive background. Line play and defense, that has been really what they've hung their hats on, and defense is not good this year. And the other thing is, in this game, a lot of times when I think it's a toss-up, I look at the quarterbacks. I think Rattler is the better of the 2 quarterbacks in this matchup, South Carolina being at home. Our index ratings this week say South Carolina by 2, so I'm going to trust those. I'm going to say South Carolina beats Kentucky. Saturday afternoon, 2:30 on CBS. Enjoy your SEC on CBS while you still can. You only got a few of these left. Georgia, number 1, they go to Tennessee. And I kind of feel like the interest in this game has fizzled because of the way things have gone for Tennessee the last few weeks.
Yeah, for sure, especially the way they completely laid an egg at Missouri last week. I mean, I'm taking Georgia. Georgia's, like, if somebody gives Georgia a game, it seems like it's for a quarter or a quarter and a half or a half. It doesn't seem like it typically stretches much beyond that. And Neyland will probably be pretty rowdy for Georgia. I mean, anytime you're a top 20 team yourself, even though you might not be playing great, anytime I think you got a number 1 team coming in, it's going to be rowdy initially. If they can maybe throw a punch early, they could hang around. But no, Georgia, I got Georgia in that one. I'd be, like I say every week, it'd be a fool to pick against Georgia.
Yeah, we've talked about this. I think Carson Beck is really not getting talked about as much as he should. He's a good quarterback. I like just the direction Georgia's going right now. They seem that they've kicked it back into that kind of gear that we expected all of the season. I know they struggled with South Carolina and Auburn, which was surprising, but it seems like they've sorted some things out. I like them to win big.
This has got one of those fields where there's going to be 107,000 people at Neyland, and by like midway through the third quarter, it's going to be 41-13, and half the stadium is gone. Doesn't it have that feel going into it? I just think Georgia, they're rolling. They got Brock Bowers back last week. I mean, holy cow. They were already doing well offensively, and now you get maybe the best offensive player in the country. I don't know if that's a stretch.
And you got him a score last week too. So
I mean, he's back. He looks all right. Boy, I think Georgia rolls against Tennessee. Do you think it's a stretch to say he's the best offensive player in the country? If you were to say, okay, you take all of the quarterbacks and you take everybody at their position, the very best players at each of their positions, and then you say, hey, this guy is so good. I think that he may be better as a tight end than any, and you guys know how big I am on like Jaden Daniels as a quarterback. Mm-hmm. I think he's better as a tight end maybe than Daniels is as a quarterback.
I don't know. I'm still giving Jaden Daniels probably the leg up. He's the best player regardless of position to me, and he's the best at his position where there's a bunch of talented guys in the league. But I do think Brock Bowers. I haven't looked at tight end numbers. Obviously, I'm not that much of a sicko. Especially after Luke Hasz and Ty Washington went down. I haven't looked at him lately. He's different. He's different, and see a long pro career ahead of him. And yeah, I mean, it's not a slight to say no to that because he's still otherworldly.
You just don't see tight ends that are being talked about as potential top 10, top 15 draft picks, and I think he's going to be one. I really do. So yeah, I think Georgia beats Tennessee big on the road.
Just 10.5 point favorite in that game. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think they win by a lot more than that. And then finally, Arkansas and FIU, 6:30 kickoff Saturday night. It's going to be on ESPNU. We all think Arkansas is going to win. Ethan, do we think Arkansas is going to win?
Yeah, I changed my mind.
Okay, Ethan was thinking about picking the upset at one point in time. So here's the question, though.
The one point in time was precisely the third
quarter. Yeah, we basically had like a meeting of the minds.
But I've reassessed.
So it's a 31-point spread. Do you think Arkansas can cover 31?
Man, I do think they can. I don't know that they will. If you gave me $100 to bet on it, I would bet Arkansas to cover because I think the depth
because it's not your money,
right? Which kind of contradicts what I said earlier. I wouldn't bet it with somebody else's money.
I know.
But if you give me the money, I'll do it. I say that because nobody's giving me the money to do it. I think the depth of their talent is there far greater than what FIU is going to bring in here. I think maybe something we haven't discussed much at all is I think Arkansas's defensive line could have a day. Like their FIU's missing their starting center now because he got popped for a positive supplement test or something that was against some NCAA rules. So they may be throwing an underclassman in there against the likes of Cam Ball and Torian Carter, Eric Gregory, and those guys. And I think the greatest discrepancy maybe in this whole game is probably on the edges, like you mentioned with Jeff Coate and Landon Jackson. I think those guys can help really handcuff an already struggling FIU offense.
I'm not going to pick Arkansas to cover. I just can't. I've seen enough of them playing at home this season. I've seen them that I don't feel confident in them doing that. I just can't pick them to have a great home performance and cover a spread like that. I mean, the Kent State game, you should have beaten that team way worse than what was the spread of that one?
What game?
Kent State.
It was very comparable to this one. I think it was around 30.
Yeah,
32
so.
maybe.
And then you play like that. BYU, looking back on that now, not a great BYU team that you lost to. The other two games, the most recent, Mississippi State and Auburn, just terrible performances. I'm not going to pick them to cover this spread just because they haven't shown me that they can do anything at home.
I think one of the things that also gives me some confidence is if KJ and the first team offense goes out and gets a pretty comfortable lead, you bring Criswell in. Criswell's not like your run-of-the-mill backup guy. Like he's an above-average backup that can obviously keep things moving.
Well, and those second teamers haven't had a whole lot of chance to play this year, and there's going to be some motivation to show out there. To Ethan's point, Arkansas has not covered the spread at home this year, not in any game. They were the favorite to beat Auburn. They were the favorite to beat Mississippi State. They were the favorite to beat BYU. And then they failed to cover against Kent State. Just saying. I don't think they cover 31. I think that I'm with Scottie. I think they can. Wouldn't surprise me if they do. It's just I wouldn't pick them to cover 31.
You're going to get one of the SBP bad beats.
What's that?
You're going to get one of the bad beats
Good. Yeah.
segments.
I mean, it's just I don't. I wonder about their mentality in this game because they've got so much going on off the field, and then obviously you've got the postseason that's out of play. So that's my thought. I don't know that Arkansas covers 31 against FIU. I think they win, but I don't know that they cover. All right. We'll be back with another Whole Hog Football Podcast next week to look back at the FIU game and look ahead to Arkansas and Missouri. Hope you'll come to our website, wholehogsports.com, for all of our coverage before and after the football game this weekend. Also, a lot of basketball going on. Scottie and Ethan will be at basketball games on Friday night. Ethan's going to Jonesboro to watch Arkansas and Arkansas State women. And then Scottie's got the game against UNC Greensboro on Friday night at Bud Walton Arena. For Ethan, Scottie, I'm Matt. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Whole Hog Football Podcast.